People from Greenhouse Sensations contacted me and asked if I'd be interested in doing an independent, bias-free review of their product called the QuadGrow. It's an automatic watering system for plants, and I'll be trialling it in my greenhouse on the allotment for growing tomatoes. As you can see, it's a fairly decent sized box. So first of all, I'll open it, put the contents on the table, and we'll have a closer look. So this is it, straight out of the box. This is based on a 2-reservoir auto watering wicking system, and each reservoir will accommodate 2 plants, so that's a total in 4, and that's where the QuadGrow comes from. I know quite a few of you have actually built your own version of the wicking system. In fact, I did a couple of years ago with a guy on the allotment, and that's been quite successful. The benefit of this is that it's straight out the box. Open the box, there's your reservoirs, put your plants in, get the wick out, fill it with liquid, and away you go. So let's have a look in detail what we got. As usual, there's a well-detailed instruction leaflet. I'll put a PDF up on the screen, and if you want to stop the video, you can actually look at that in more detail. If you're not familiar with the company Greenhouse Sensations, that's the same company what produced the popular Vitapod. Now, as you might know, I've got 3 Vitapods, 2 large and 1 small. I'll just say at this point, the Vitapods have been purchased by me, not been supplied at all. It's just something I purchased, I saw, I like, and I must say I do endorse it. It's a very good product. Anyway, back onto the QuadGrow. Let's see what we've actually got in here. First thing, as I said, we've got the 2 reservoir tanks. These are called the Smart Reservoir on the instruction leaflet. Then on top of that, we've got this feeder tray which pops on the top. Inside the feeder tray, there's a little aperture, and that allows you there to add your liquid and nutrients. And to reduce evaporation, we've got a couple of these covers which are called the nutrient access cover, and they pop on the top. Included here are 4 tubs for your plants. There's 4, 8, 16, 20, 21 holes in the bottom, and the 1 hole is obviously for the wick. I'll actually put the capacity of each tub on a link underneath. And also including here, are the various fixing kit, including the spanner. That there is a tank connector for joining the 2 reservoirs, and also there's a couple of root filters which fit inside each reservoir, but we'll look in that in more detail as we start the build. Another thing I forgot to mention, just included in the kit, is the QuadGrow nutrients. Now these feel like granules, and I assume they've got to be filled with water. There's part A and part B, and so we'll look at those in more detail when we come to use them. Reading the instruction leaflet provided, they suggest actually setting the pot up with the plant a while in front before you actually commission the watering system. 2 reasons mainly. First of all, it gets the plant established, allowing it to get its roots down, and also, particularly if you're using fresh compost, the compost will already contain feed and nutrients for the plant. So you don't want to be adding nutrients into the liquid as well, because it's the fact of giving it overdose. So first of all, we need to set up the wicking system. Supplied in the kit is these 4 capillary feeder mats. And if you look, they've got an angle shape on. Now this needs to be pointing up. Bottom of the pot, there's a large hole, and the matting goes up through the middle hole. So first of all, we'll roll the mat up into a little tube, and then feed this through the centre of the pot. The instructions say to keep the tip of the feeder mat around about 1 inch below the top of the surface of the pot. But the gauge will be, we definitely need to make sure that the bottom of the wick actually touched the bottom of the reservoir tank. So we'll just call the tank up here and do a little dry run. I'll just pop the feeder tray onto the top, then we'll feed the wick right the way through to the bottom. That's the potting position there. The wick is around about an inch below the rim of the pot. We're looking in the nutrient access hole. You can see there the wick is actually touching the floor and bending over, so that's more than deep enough. Also, remember to spread the wick out so that it covers as much area of compost once it's filled and the plant's inside. So with the wick in position, we can think about planting now. First thing we've got to look at is the compost. Compost, personal choice. Some people prefer to use cocoa coir, but for me I'll be using a mix of perlite together with a peat-free compost. In the instructions provided, it recommends that you do not use a compost that has moisture retaining gels in, or anything that is heavy, dense nutrients. If you look on the bag of your compost, it will give you an idea of how much compost the nutrients are in there. Usually for me, I reckon 4 weeks onwards, 6 weeks at the most. But what they suggest is once you know the nutrients in the compost, start actually feeding through your QuadGrow 1 week before the nutrients of the compost runs out. If you're unsure, I would feed after 2 weeks. This is a substrate that I'll be using. It's about 60% peat-free compost and 40% perlite. When adding the compost, try to keep the wick as central as you can within the pot. And ideally, you want this to be splayed out, and once the plant's inserted, surround the root ball of the plant like a shroud. This will give maximum supply of water to the plant during its growing season. So next we come to the exciting part, the planting. This is a tomato variety, it's called Crimson Crush, and it's a blight resistant one. It's actually my favourite. First of all, I've got to make a depression into the soil. Just pop the bucket up here, because I'm going to need to remove some soil. Again, bear in mind where the capillary wick is positioned, and you want the root ball as close to that as possible. That should be deep enough. Get the plant out of the pot. Oop. As you can see, that's got a decent root ball on it. So I'm just going to pop it in, just check the height, that's about right, then just backfill. Press well all the way around the sides to expel any air pockets. That's 1 down, 3 more to go. I'll give it good water. The plants have been happily growing away for the last couple of weeks in their QuadGrow plots. I'm just now preparing the base, and they'll be going on top of this builder's plank, ready to set the tanks up. I've got a couple of breeze blocks, cinder blocks, in the bed of the greenhouse, so I've just popped a level on there. You can see that's fairly level, and the builder's plank will just go on top. This QuadGrow system I'm setting up is a 4-pot system. and it comprises of 2 smart reservoir tanks. Looking at the tanks, you'll see there's a hole in the one end there, and that end's blanked off, and this is to enable these 2 smart reservoirs to be connected with this tank connector which fits in there, and inside is a filter on each end. Now there's nothing stopping you from actually putting a hole in this blank end and daisy chaining these tanks for as long as you like. What I'll do, I'll actually measure the hole what's already in here, and if you want to put it in fact the centre of the hole is actually marked in here, so it'd be quite easy to put a little tank cutter in there to produce a hole. But we got 2 tanks, so let's get them connected. This is the tank connector. It's got a threaded collar on each end which is identical, and that there is joined by a piece of fairly rigid plastic cum rubber. And the idea of that, I would guess, is that if you've got a slight variation in the height of the tanks, this will bend enough to actually maintain the watertight seal. So the first thing we have to do is put one of the supplied rubber washers over the thread, and you do that for both ends, and then that's threaded through the tank. So it's a matter of popping the tank connector in. Once the thread's showing, pop another rubber washer on, and included in the kit is a set of these root filters which screw onto the end of the tank connector. It's probably easy to grab the filter and turn the connector, and that there is in place. I do advise that once it's connected is to use the supplied spanner. Just give it a light little tighten, not too tight enough to compress the rubber too much, but just a little gentle nip like that, and that's enough. With the root filter in place, I'll just give it a little closer look. It's got an extremely fine mesh cum gauze in there, and I'd imagine at the end of the season it'd be ideal to give that a little washout, store ready for next year. If you notice inside the tank there are graduation mark levels. I'm not actually sure how much they are each, because the tank I think holds a capacity of 30 litres, and looking at the top there is a pre-formed hole, and that there is to fit the optional MuddyBootz kit. In fact, you could probably fit a little ball valve in there as well if you wanted, but if you don't want to actually fit that, they supply a blanking grommet which you can just pop inside there to provide a watertight seal. So that's the 2 smart reservoirs connected together with the root filters on, and I've also fitted the blanking plug for the optional MuddyBootz kit. I'll just pop on these feeder trays on the top, and then what I'll do is put a tape measure across. Just measure it, it'll give you an idea of the footprint this setup actually takes. For those of you working in Imperial, that's just under 51.5 inches, and that's 130, almost 131 centimetres. And the width-wise, widest point we can find, that's around about 14 inches. Yes, 14 inches, and that's 36 centimetres. With these feeder trays on the top there, you'll notice these little holes, and these are so you can actually pop a supporting cane right the way through into the soil below. The first pot's in place, so just thread your hand through the feeder hole and make sure that the wick is actually level and touching the bottom of the tank, so that it can actually start the capillary action when we fill the reservoir. So with the pots in position, I'm just now starting to fill up the smart reservoirs. This is just plain water, and Greenhouse Sensation actually recommend that you run the system with just plain water for a while, And what this does, it gives the nutrients, what's existing in the compost, time to be taken up by the plants. And once you think that's done, I recommend 3 to 4 weeks, start adding the nutrients into the liquid feed. I'm not sure how well this will show, but I don't know if you can see there is actually an overflow hole in there which prevents the tank from being overfilled. I've put a little too much in there, as you can see, so it's draining out and it'll find its own level. So with the smart reservoirs topped up to capacity, all that's left is to fit these nutrient access covers. Also included in the supplied kit are these serrated rubber grommets, and they fit in the holes in the top tray. The idea of those is to support the canes, what you put up. But I've used some quite thick bamboo canes. In fact, it was a tight fit going through the plain hole, so I haven't bothered fitting those. Regarding nutrients and feeding this system, Greenhouse Sensations have cleverly provided a 2-part feed for this. This is in granular form at the moment, each one of these, part A and part B. And first of all, I suggest that filling each container with 2.5 litres of warm water and thoroughly shaking it to mix it. Just having a quick look on part A, it says it's a complete soluble plant food, contains 5 major nutrients and 6 trace elements, ideal for growing all fruits and veg, super concentrated, bigger harvest and better root growth. And look on there, the NPK value is 12,012 plus calcium. And on the part B, the NPK on there is 6,925, so this is a high in potash. So with the A and B containers now topped up, the actual dosage recommendation is to get a watering can first and then add solution A, mix that into the water, and then add solution B to the water in the watering can. And the recommended dosage is 6 millimetres of nutrients A and B to every litre of water. Finally, this other thing here, this is called a Mulch Cap and Cane Support Kit. This was forwarded by Greenhouse Sensation. It's not standard part of the QuadGrow kit, it's an additional extra. But there's 4 of these, and these actually pop on the top. And the idea is to reduce evaporation coming through the plant. There's holes in here for the cane to go through, and also go through the cane in the bottom of the smart reservoir. I decided not to use them for the tomatoes, but if I was growing a smaller plant, something like a chilli, I'd definitely put it in there. So that's about it for my review of the QuadGrow system from Greenhouse Sensations. Hope you found it useful. I'll put the links for the company and the items below in the show notes. Many thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.